On the phone, we have a coaching legend. He went on to have his very successful career at Iowa. Is their athletic director, Bump Elliott. How you doing today?
Fine, David. Very good, thank you.
I see that you were a successful football player in college at Purdue in Michigan. How did you end up choosing Purdue for college?
Well, I was sent there in the Marine Corps in the V-12 program, and fortunately I was sent with a group of people from Illinois like Alex Agassi and Tony Butkovich and people like that, and Joe Buscemi and Frank Bauman. They all were from Illinois, and they were sent over to Purdue, and fortunately I was sent there too. I was just graduating out of high school, and so I got to play on the 1943 team that won the Big Ten championship.
But in a perfect world, you would have gone to the University of Illinois because you were at Bloomington.
Well, my home was Bloomington, but because of the war, the recruiting system wasn't even in effect very much. Everybody just went where they were told to go, or signed up and went into war or whatever it was. So I signed up in the Marine Corps.
Was it going to be a package deal? Whatever college got you, they would get your brother?
Pardon again?
Was it going to be a package deal that whatever school signed you would get your brother, or
Not
vice
necessarily.
versa?
Again, the recruiting setup was just there wasn't much recruiting at that time because unless they were 4F and not qualify for the service, why everything was all up to what your reserve status was, and so there was no recruiting. I wasn't recruited out of high school even.
Wait a second. You won the Chicago Tribune Silver football in college, right? But in the high schools,
yeah,
high schools did they? The colleges didn't pay attention?
Well, the fact is that they knew that I had signed up in the Marine Corps Reserve, and there was no reason to recruit because I didn't know where I was going to go when I signed up into the reserve, and they created the V-12 program, which was a pre-officer training type thing. They created that during the war, and I was in the service actually in 43 after I graduated from high school and went to Purdue University because I was sent there in the Marine Corps.
I see that your freshman year at Purdue, you had a varsity letter in football, basketball, and baseball.
That's correct.
Did you have a favorite sport?
Oh, I suppose football was. I guess so. Although I did like baseball very much too. I wasn't a great basketball player. I could guard people, but I couldn't shoot too well.
Now, your brother Pete was a pretty good golfer, though.
Well, he was, and incidentally, Pete is the only 12-letter winner in the history of the University of Michigan. He won 3 letters in all 4 years that he was there. And so he's the only man in the history of the university to win 12 letters.
So were you any good at golf? Or did he make you caddy for him?
Just mediocre. I should have been caddying for him most of the time. But no, I liked to play, but was nowhere near the skill that Pete had or many others had. And so it was fun.
What was it like being on that 43 Purdue team when you went undefeated?
Well, it was really something else. Tony Butkovich broke the Big Ten scoring record in 6 games, and he was at fullback. And after the Wisconsin game, he was sent to Parris Island, South Carolina, in November. And so I got to play after that for Tony at Minnesota and Indiana. And I played in 3 games: Wisconsin, Minnesota, and Indiana. But I got to start in the Minnesota and Indiana games, and we finished the season undefeated. We had Tony Butkovich, Mike Cassip, John Guinness, Frank Bauman, Joe Buscemi, and Alex Agassi, all from the University of Illinois, plus Tony Butkovich. That's pretty good.
Not bad.
They've been a great team. But
And you were a burly 5'10", 160-pounder, right?
Well, soaking wet, yeah. Well, you got to be tough and big.
Yeah.
No, I wasn't. I was kind of a skinny little guy that ran away from everybody if I could.
And you went both ways. You played defense too.
Yeah, I did. I played both ways. Played defensive halfback and also started as a right halfback.
And then after you got out of the military, you joined Pete at Michigan.
That's correct. He had been sent to Michigan in the V-12, and the war ended, and so he stayed right there. And when I got out of the service after I was in China for a year in the Marine Corps, when I got back from there, I joined him at Michigan. And it was just my decision all the way to see if I could join him up there, and it worked out.
And I would assume the coaches would welcome you with open arms.
Well, they had so many players in. They really did have. They had letter winners from 2 and 3 and 4 teams in most every position. And they when I went to Michigan, they put me at right halfback, and I was 5th string right halfback when the season started. So, but I did get to play some defense then, and got to work into the lineup a little bit more after that.
You've got to be the only guy who's played for 2 undefeated teams from different schools.
Yeah, that's true. In the Big Ten, we both those teams that I played on were undefeated and won the Big Ten championship. And unfortunately, Notre Dame did the same thing in those years, and they won the national championship. At least Notre Dame thinks so. But
they had
Purdue people and Michigan people, they say they won the national championship.
Yeah, the Notre Dame people had the better PR department, I think. They got more of the publicity.
Well, they had some pretty good players like Lou Jack and Jonaker and some of those guys, too.
Right.
Because Lou Jack won the Heisman that one year.
Yes, he did. In 1947.
Okay. What was it like going out to California for the 1948 Rose Bowl?
Well, it was a really great experience. We hadn't been there before, and they do a very good job of taking care of the entertainment and all the activities and so forth. We were out there almost 2 weeks because we needed practice time, and it was fun. We met some great people out there and some great friends, and being in the Rose Bowl is about as big as ever I could think of as far as college football is concerned.
Yeah,
we didn't have a playoff then, of course.
Right. I don't think people have an appreciation for what the bowl system used to be, and the Rose Bowl would be the Big Ten champ against the Pac-8 champ.
I agree with you. They think that the national championship game is the most important thing. And in my opinion, it was playing in the Rose Bowl because that meant you won the Big Ten championship and you were playing for your conference, and that was big. That was really big.
And they still call it the granddaddy of them all.
Yeah, it was the first one. It was started way back in, 01 or something. I don't know how long ago.
So who got the better girls? The quarterback, who was your brother, or you?
Better what?
Who got more women? Because remember Alabama in the bowl, everybody was saying the Alabama quarterback always gets the homecoming queen, the beautiful girl.
Yeah, well, that didn't ever enter into it. we were very big men on campus as far as the women were concerned.
Now,
what kind of a question is that?
A pretty goofy one, but David's known for asking those goofy questions.
Okay, that's okay.
Now, you and Pete roomed together.
Yeah.
Did you guys ever get on one another's nerves?
No. We were close. Been close all of our lives. The whole family was very close, but Pete and I were very, very close together, and had gone to school together, played together in athletics, and at the same high school, same Then at Michigan, I was only there 2 years. He was there 4 years. But it just was one of those things that felt natural to be with him somewhere, and it worked out nicely. He was, of course, not only a brother but a best friend too.
Yeah.
You took care of him. I mean, any girl had to get your stamp of approval.
No, he took care of himself.
Now, the 49 season when you guys won the Big Ten and you defeated Southern Cal 49-0 in the Rose Bowl.
That was really the 47 season.
It was the 47 season, right?
Yeah.
I
thought you said 49.
No, the score was 49-0, right?
Yeah, that's right.
You're up by that margin in the Rose Bowl, and you're thinking, how much better are you guys than the rest of the college football world? Because, Southern Cal should be decent, right?
Well, they were very good, and it was one of those games that we were well prepared. Obviously, our coach, Fritz Kreisler, was one of the great coaches of all time, and he got the team ready like I've never seen anybody prepare a team, and it just seemed like everything we did and they did just kind of worked our way. And it was one of those games that happens once in a while, and but it was really, really a fun game to play on our side of the field.
Yeah. Frank Gifford told us that when he went to USC, that John Wayne recruited him and was a big supporter. Was John Wayne at that game?
I don't know. I can't remember whether he was or not. He might have been. I'm trying to think. Who was the Grand Marshal? Maybe Arnold Palmer. No. That might have been I don't know. I can't remember who it was.
It was a while ago.
Yeah, a long time ago.
Anyway, you mentioned Fritz Kreisler, and a lot of people just know Kreisler Arena at Michigan. What was he like to play for?
Well, he would be, if you'd ever want to see a coach who was dignified and kind of like a chief executive officer. He was a director of football operations, and everything he said, we hung on every word he said, and he was a believer. He was as good a coach as I've ever been associated with, and I've been associated with some pretty good ones like Evashevsky and Hayden Fry and others, but I would say Fritz Kreisler is absolutely the best coach I've ever been with.
How did, in that Rose Bowl game when you won 49-0, how did Bob Chappis end up being the MVP?
How did he what?
How did he end up winning the MVP in that game and not you?
I thought Jack Weisenberger was MVP.
I looked online, it's saying Bob Chappis got it. Maybe they gave it to the wrong guy.
Well, no, I can't tell you who. Well, because Weisenberger scored 3 touchdowns in the game. Chappius was a great football player and a great friend, and he did everything that you wanted to have a tailback do, and a great leader, and everybody loved him, and he was a great player. But I really thought that Weisenberger won the most valuable in that game. But neither here. They both played very well. They were great players.
Now that 47 season, the toughest game, Illinois, when you guys won 14-7?
Yeah, I'd say that was probably it. It was a real tough game, and one of those that really meant everything to both teams, of course, and they were very, very good on defense. They had Rucksteger and some great players, and but we were fortunate enough to get one more touchdown than they did.
I looked up the Grand Marshal. In 1948, it was General Omar Bradley.
No kidding. Well, okay. In 48.
In 48 and 47 was Bob Hope.
Okay. All right.
Now, you hope to have played another season of college ball in 48, but that got turned down. How did you feel?
Will you repeat that, please?
Yes. you wanted to play another year in 1948 of college
Well,
ball,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But you got turned down.
Well, the thought was this, that in the actual service play really wasn't supposed to count. In the 2 years I was at Purdue, it was a question of whether I was a serviceman or at Purdue. And I played half of the 43 season and half of the 44 season. So in total context, I played within one fiscal year. And so the people at Michigan, Ralph Egler, the faculty representative, presented that case to the Big Ten, and they declared that I played 2 years at Purdue, even though I only got to play 3 games one year and 6 games the next year. So that's okay. They petitioned for another year, and it was turned down, and so those things happen.
Well, is there a reason that you didn't play in the NFL?
Well, not necessarily. I did in the practice the All-Star game. You know, the college All-Star game used to be have All-Stars and play against the pros, and we were going to play against the Chicago Cardinals in Chicago. And in one of the scrimmages we had at Dyke Stadium, I twisted my knee, and so I didn't get to play in that game. And I think that probably was one reason why I didn't pursue professional football after that. I just felt that it wasn't worth it as far as I was concerned, and so that was it.
Was there a difficult decision choosing between going into coaching and pondering the possibility of becoming a doctor?
Well, you know, as a youngster, I always thought I wanted to be a doctor, but when I was at Michigan, the opportunity came in 1948 to stay with the Michigan team as a grad assistant and help coach. And so I got into it that way, and then in 49 I got a real job as a backfield coach at Oregon State University. And so that's what happened. It just kind of fell into place. It wasn't planned, but it was. I had some good breaks.
Then how did you get the Michigan job?
Well, I was at assistant coach with Forrest Evashevsky here at Iowa for 3 years. At the end of the third year, Fritz Kreisler called me and asked me to come up and visit with him, and I did. And Benny Osterbahn was the head coach at the time, and so I accepted a backfield coaching job at Michigan in trying to remember the dates. Anyway, and was up there 2 years with Benny as assistant coach. And then Benny retired, and Fritz asked me if I'd like to be the coach, and I said, "You bet."
It wasn't a tough choice to make that decision. It took you all of about half a second.
It wasn't too difficult to make that.
Did you enjoy going up against Ohio State and Woody Hayes?
Yeah, I did. I know it was a tough game, but a big game, and we did win the championship one year, beating Ohio State down there 10-0. What took us to the Rose Bowl when I was coaching. Then we had some other games at different scores, but it was always a great game.
What was like being on Forrest Evashevsky's staff? Because you have such legendary coaching names, you know,
Yeah.
as part of your history.
Well, I think he was one of the better coaches I've ever been associated with, and Evashevsky had a great background at Michigan as a player, and then he coached in the East at Hamilton College before he went to Michigan State as an assistant, and then he went to Washington State as head coach, and then to Iowa. And I joined him when he came to Iowa from Washington State because I was at Oregon State at the time. And he had as great a imagination and knowledge and sense of timing, and by that I mean he had a great thought of when to do things and how to do them, like I can't believe anybody could. He would do things that were very unorthodox, but very timely, and made a big difference as far as the success. And he was a great coach here at the University of Iowa, and I was sorry that when he decided to become an athletic director rather than a coach, because I thought that's where he should be. Not that he wasn't a good athletic director, I just mean that he was such a great coach.
What was it like? What was it like coaching against your brother when he was in Illinois?
Well, it was a difficult thing only from the point of view that if you felt you were coaching directly against Pete, which I didn't, it was our team against their team, our players against their players. And so if you look at it that way, why you want to get your team ready to play against their players. And I will say this, though, that when we played in the year that he went to the Rose Bowl, the year they won, the only game they lost that year was to Michigan. And I have to admit that after that game, I felt that was maybe one game that I maybe wish we'd have lost. But I didn't quite feel that. But it was one of those days that happened where we were fortunate enough to win. But Illinois went on and won the championship with Grabowski and Butkovich and great players. And he had a great team. That was really something for him. That was 1963, the year before we took our team to the Rose Bowl in '64. Illinois went in '63, and we went in '64, playing in the '64-65 Rose Bowl.
Was that your best Michigan team, do you think?
Yeah, that was the best Michigan team I had. It was a good one, and we really fit together nicely.
You had some great players on those teams. One of them was, Dan Deerdorf?
Will Deerdorf and Tom Mack and Jim Mandich and Rick Volk. Those were great players, and they all went into the pros, and outstanding players. So,
is there one player that you says this was the best one I ever coached?
I think it'd be hard to determine that. Rick Volk, who played for us as a defensive halfback, he could have played offense too. He went with Baltimore, and Tom Mack played for Los Angeles Rams. He was a great player. Bill Yearby, he went with Detroit, and of course Deerdorf was a great player. Outstanding young men.
Were you upset when Woody Hayes decided to go for that 2-point conversion when they were beating you by 36?
No. At that point, that didn't make any difference. Somebody asked me that after the game. I said, no, it didn't make any difference to me. Somebody did comment, though, that they asked Woody, well, why did you go for 2? He said, in a very wise remark, well, I couldn't go for 3. How would you feel if he said that to you? And that made no difference to me. It didn't bother me a lick. We just lost the game, that's all.
Away from the football season, did the head coaches get along, or did they socialize, or
to some degree? Of course, I was very close to Pete Elliott. But at the conference meetings and even NCAA meetings, we did a lot of things together. One of my better friends was Duffy Doherty at Michigan State. And I think some of the Michigan people didn't like that because you're supposed to hate Duffy Doherty at Michigan. I couldn't do that. He was a great friend. But no, I knew the coaches pretty well, and of course I was closest to Pete Elliott.
What about Alex Agassi? He was at Northwestern for a while.
Who?
Alex Agassi?
Oh, yeah. Well, Alex and I played together, and we were very close. And John Pont also at Northwestern and Indiana. But Alex was a great friend.
When Don Canham came in as athletic director, could you sort of see the writing on the wall as far as where your career was headed at Michigan?
No, it didn't bother me a bit. As far as I'm concerned, whether you are leading up the question whether or not I was fired, I wasn't. The point at Michigan was that after the last season that I coached in '68, I had made the decision myself to step down because I knew that there was an opening as associate athletic director at the University of Michigan, and Don Canham had never filled that job. So after the season was over with, I went in to talk with Don about that job and retiring into that position. And I asked him if I wanted to do that, would that job be open to me? And he said yes. And so I thought about it 4 or 5 days on Thanksgiving and came back and said, Don, I'll take that job.
And I give Bo Schumbecker credit, though, when he gave you that game ball after that '69 Ohio State game.
Yeah, well, Bo was a great fan. I was involved with the hiring of Bo. Canham hired him, of course, but I was involved with that. And Bo was a good friend and a great coach. He did a great job.
You know, speaking of hiring, you moved on to the University of Iowa as athletic director, where you got to hire an awful lot of very successful coaches, you know.
Well, we had at one time pretty good staff. Of course, Hayden Fry in football, and Tom Davis and Lute Olson both in basketball, and Dan Gable in wrestling, and Dwayne Banks in baseball. We had some really good coaches, and that was centered right in the I can't remember the years, but in the 70s, I think it was.
When you hired a coach, they didn't go anywhere.
What?
When you hired a coach, they were for good. You didn't have to fire them; they stayed there.
Well, we hope so. that was the whole purpose of it, but didn't always work out that way. I slipped up on a couple of them once in a while.
Because in basketball, you went from Lute Olson to Dr. Tom Davis, and you had Hayden Fry there pretty much your whole time.
Yeah, and Dan Gable was there the whole time pretty much. And, wrestling is a big sport in Iowa.
Extremely so, yeah.
Yeah.
What's the key to being a successful athletic director? Some are very hands-on, some are let the coaches do what the coaches have to do.
I think if you, who knows the answer to it, because some people are successful not doing anything, and some people are hands-on. I was never what you'd call a hands-on athletic director. I worked with the coach to help him succeed in whatever way he felt he had to go to succeed, and let him do the coaching. He was the coach of the team. He's the one that ran it, and I always supported him. Of course, you wouldn't support him if he did something that was out of the ordinary, but that didn't happen very often, and so I felt that they were the boss of their organization, and I wanted to help him win.
Is there a coach you think was your best hire?
Well, I can only say this, that the coach that made the biggest difference, obviously, was Hayden Fry, because football was struggling until we got Hayden Fry. And when he came, football started to be pretty good, very good at Iowa. Basketball had always been pretty good, so with Olson and Davis, that kind of just followed the pattern, and of course wrestling was the same thing. But the biggest difference was Hayden Fry.
How did you and your brother end up on What's My Line in 1961?
I can't tell you why or who, but somebody called and asked if we wanted to go on, and we said sure. That was a fun show.
Was there any temptation to hire your brother as head coach?
Everything what?
Was there any temptation to hire your brother as head coach at Iowa?
Oh no, no. We never had any problems, and no confrontation, no problems at all.
No, but did you ever think about hiring him as your coach?
Oh, Pete?
Yes.
Well, not after he. You mean after he left Illinois?
Yes.
Right.
Well, I'll tell you the truth. When I hired Hayden Fry, the person I called was Pete Elliott down in Florida. He was associate athletic director down there with Ernie McCoy at Miami of Florida. And I called him to ask him who he felt was one of the better coaches that might be good for Iowa. And he immediately said Hayden Fry. And I said, well, why? And he said, well, I interviewed him last year, and we wanted him at Miami, but we couldn't hire him. And I said, okay, thank you. I called Hayden Fry, and didn't happen very fast, but pretty quick.
When you look at college football today, and you know, the millions of dollars and all the media exposure, and you contrast that to college football when you started out in it, what goes through your mind?
Well, it's changed a lot. Obviously, what it really centers around now is more entertainment than just participation. When I was in school and going to school and so forth and coaching, it was an activity for student athletes. And we recruited, sure, but the promotion of it and the television has made a big difference in the whole thing, because not only of exposure and to the millions of people, but also the money involved. And it seemed to be that money is the big driving force in this day and age, and that's what's making it go. And so it's turned into more entertainment and it's still a great sport. Don't get me wrong, it's a great sport. But entertainment is the key to what's going on, and that changes the game a little bit.
So what Big Ten team do you root for? Michigan, Iowa?
I root for Iowa. And I'll root for Michigan when they don't play Iowa. But no, I really root for Big Ten schools. Pete Elliott coached at Illinois, and I coached at Michigan and Iowa, and I played at Purdue in Michigan, and my father coached at Northwestern. He coached basketball and he was a line coach for Charlie Bachman way back in the 30s. At Northwestern, he was in medical school there. So I really have to say I've got quite a the Big Ten background, and I'm all for the Big Ten always.
How gratifying do you think it was for your dad to have two sons coaching on such an elite level? Because I have the feeling if he could have, he probably would have been a coach rather than a doctor.
No, he wanted to be a doctor,
Really?
He used his head. He was smart. Don't ever let your son or become a coach when he can become a doctor. Anyway, I think he felt quite proud about it. Unfortunately, he never saw us play against each other. He had a coronary and was not able to go to football games. And he passed away about the time that I came to Iowa as an assistant coach.
So how did your son get into coaching if you don't let your son get into coaching?
Well, that just happened. I didn't tell him what to do. And but he has really enjoyed it, and he's at Notre Dame now. I don't know if you knew that.
No.
He's an assistant coach at Notre Dame, and with the defense, works for the defense, and he loves it there. He thinks it's a great school, and certainly it sure is. outstanding institution, and they obviously had great football programs.
So occasionally you might root for the Fighting Irish?
Well, I've been over there twice this year. I saw them play against Southern Cal and against Oklahoma. So you can see that I have a soft spot in my heart for the Irish.
So do you share stories with Ara Parseghian?
I really haven't talked to Ara since Bob went over there as coach. I know Ara very well. We were good friends and played a lot of golf together. And he was one of the coaches, in the Big Ten and then at Notre Dame that I coached at the same time he did. And he was a great coach. He really was an outstanding person, a great coach, and I admire him very much. But he's a good friend. I haven't had a chance to talk